both to the Greeks and to the barbarians, both to the wise and to the unwise. So as much as in me is, I'm ready to preach the gospel to you who are in Rome also. And then we get to the famous part of this chapter. He says in verse 16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know it by heart, don't you? For it is the power of God unto salvation for everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Greek. For therein the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. Words that sparks a reformation in the church and change the world. The just shall live by faith. Now maybe you think I'm going to talk about that verse, the just shall live by faith, but that's actually not what I want to mention to you. Maybe you think I'm going to talk to you about I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That would be an appropriate theme for an evangelist, wouldn't you say? But that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on these few words that the Apostle Paul says there in verse, which one is it? Verse 14. I am a debtor. I'm a debtor. I was reading this one day and I thought to myself, you know, isn't it interesting how very often we read the Bible and we kind of don't slow down to really think about what we're reading, and we just kind of always thought it said a particular thing. And then when we slow down, we realize it's actually saying something very different. I always thought when Paul said I'm a debtor, he was saying, you know, I'm a debtor to Christ. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Because, I mean, after all, Jesus appears to Paul on the Damascus Road and saves his soul, and Jesus died for him. I mean, we're all debtors to Christ, aren't we? But he doesn't actually say that. He doesn't say I'm a debtor to Christ. If he would have said I'm a debtor to the church, that would make sense to me. Because remember, Paul had been a persecutor of the church. He hauled them off to prison. He stood there when Stephen was stoned. Imagine if there was a guy like that had done such horrible things to you, and then you forgave him and welcomed him into your community. That's what Paul was. He'd been an outsider, he'd been a persecutor, but he was forgiven and he was welcomed. I would say he was a debtor to the church, right? But that's not what he says. He doesn't say I'm a debtor to Christ. He doesn't say I'm a debtor to the church. If he would have said I'm a debtor to the Jews, that would have also made sense to me. Because after all, Paul was a Jew. That's where he came from. That's where his heritage was. Obviously, if he felt a burden to take the gospel back to his people, that would make complete sense. But he doesn't say I'm a debtor to the Jew. He doesn't say I'm a debtor to the church. He doesn't say I'm a debtor to Christ. He says I'm a debtor to the Greeks and to the Romans, to the barbarians. In other words, to the Gentiles. And I thought to myself, now that's strange. Why is Paul thinking that he has a debt to the Gentiles? What have they ever done for him that he needs to repay? And as I thought about it and prayed about it, suddenly the light went on and I realized what was happening. Let me explain it like this. Let's say I have $200 and I give that $200 to Brad, my associate here. And I say, Bradley, here's $200. I want you to give 100 of this. You can keep 100, but I want you to give the other 100 to Barry Tuckson. What I have just done is I have made Brad a debtor to Barry. Because until he gives Barry what I've given him to give to Barry, he is a debtor. Does that make sense? And what Paul is saying here is that the gospel I received from Christ, he told me to deliver it to the Gentiles. It was invested into my life, not for me, but for them. And until I pay this debt, until I deliver this gospel, I'm a debtor to the Greeks, to the Romans, to the barbarians, to the wise, to the unwise. Do you see it? Here's what I believe with all my heart, that we have been, all of us, made a debtor by what Jesus did for us. Yes, our lives are personally blessed by it, but it's not just been given to us for our own benefit. We have a debt to pay. We have something that's been given to us for the world. That's why we go. That's why we preach. That's why our team works around the clock, going from nation to nation. This week alone, we go to crusades all over the world, some of the most difficult, dangerous, dark places on the planet. People say, why do you go? Why do you push so hard? You know, what is the urgency? It's because we have a debt to pay. All of us. Because of this precious gospel that has been delivered to us for the sake of a lost and dying world. And I tell you what, the days as we